to dive into the mystique of Hamm's beer, what is known as the land of sky blue waters. Like, to me, this is very mysterious. So I'm really excited to hear. And then I also want to talk about the paraphernalia that is like related to Hamm's that they've done, from mini sewing kits to massive signs, always with this like lake scene and sometimes the bear. So to help us understand the origins of this passion and almost cult following of Hamm's, Peter Hetzel is joining us, along with one of the legends of Hamm's collecting phenomenon, Stevan Miner, also known as Dr. Hamm's.
Talk Hamm's all night, dear. This is just, it's not just a hobby with me. It is a passion. It really is. And I enjoy doing this kind of stuff like this. When Peter asked me, I was excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's what else do you do in Minnesota on a Saturday night, right?
Right.
Well, boy, the weather sucks, and it's.
And I really want to thank you. First of all, Crystal, thank you for agreeing to this idea.
Putting up with
I love it.
Yeah, I'm putting up with this. You're just amazing. And Steven, thank you for saying yes.
Anytime.
It's been a long time, and Crystal and I have been friends for 10 years, and I'm kind of a synchronicity guy, and you and I were talking also that the blue Hamm's can came out this week.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of a momentous moment, I think, for
it really is. It's just so cool. Yeah.
Well, Steve, why don't you tell us how? And I'll share my story, but I think one of the things that Crystal was interested in is the origin. Where does it begin? Where a passion begins for someone? And I'm sure you've told your story to many people, but I haven't heard it, and I'd like to hear it.
Okay. Well, I started collecting beer cans like a lot of kids did back in the 70s. I worked for Chrysler Corporation in the early 70s, and there was two other guys that I worked with, and we took turns driving. And the deal was, whoever drove, they bought the beer for the ride home. And so I started collecting the Schmidt cans, the scenic cans, and realizing that there was all these different ones, 21 actually to be exact. And I got up to a collection of about 4,000 cans roughly. And of course, ran out of room. And so I kept narrowing the collection down. I got rid of the rusty cans, and I got rid of the 16-ounce cans. I got rid of the foreign cans. And then I ended up collecting just Minnesota brewed cans. And so then I got to the point where I had a pretty good collection, and I worked it. Anybody that came into my auto shop, I'd say, hey, you know where any old beer cans are? And so I found some great finds, and I was able to parlay that into some really good collectible cans.
What year are we talking here about?
Early 70s.
Early 70s. Okay. Yeah.
Early 70s. Yeah, I'm an old guy.
Yeah, well, me too. Yeah, I'm an old guy.
But so I got to the point where I'd go to these shows, and I wasn't able to get anything new because I had everything. And I got a little bored with it, and I'm a huge baseball fan, sports fan, Minnesota sports fan, and I remember those commercials as a kid. And another thing that kind of got me going was my grandparents lived in St. Paul, and my parents would bring me up there for a couple of weeks in the summertime to get rid of me. And my grandpa was quite a beer drinker. His bar of choice was the Anchor Inn on Snelling Avenue, not too far from the state fairgrounds. And of course, back then, kids could go in a bar, no big deal. And my grandma would say, well, go get Grandpa. It's time for supper. So I'd walk up to the bar, go in. Of course, the guys so they knew me and stuff. And I'd go in, they'd sit me up on a bar stool and give me a bag of peanuts and an orange pop. And they had a scenorama there with the moving water and stuff. And they said, if you watch long enough, a bear sticks his head out of that tent. Well, of course, it never happened. But the impression that made on a 7-year-old, and of course, you'd look away for a second. Oh, you just missed him. And so I told my wife, I said, I'm going to start collecting Hamm stuff. And this would have been about 75, roughly.
All right.
1975. And so I sold my can collection to a couple guys in St. Louis, which I really regret that, not looking back. And I started collecting Hamm stuff primarily in 1975, roughly right in there. And not realizing how much stuff they actually had. Oh,
that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, Steven, is how many paraphernalia items from, like Crystal mentioned, the little sewing kit to, the massive scene around. How many items? Maybe 10,000 possibly?
Oh, more than that. Oh gosh, yeah. Oh yeah. If you count every coaster, every glass, every
Right.
little item, like you say, they had to be the top. I mean, they would put their name on everything: ashtrays, lighters,
Yes.
barbecue grill scrapers. My God, it's just jackknifes, you name it. I mean, they put their name on it. So I started collecting, and back when I first started doing this, it was still largely just cans. Most people just collected cans. There was a lady from Mapleton, Minnesota that collected trays, and there was a couple people that collected glassware, but the signage, or Brianna as we call it, wasn't really that popular yet. And so I was pretty lucky. I kind of got in on the ground floor, and of course, the brewery was still open at this point, the Hamm Brewery up in St. Paul. And I worked for Goodyear Tire Company at the time, and Goodyear would give you your birthday as a holiday, an official holiday. So I would save my money all year. And my wife said, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And I says, "Go to the brewery." So we would drive up there and go take the tour. And I could do the tour myself. I had it memorized. I was answering the questions before they asked them, right? Who is this guy, right? And so we'd go take the tour, and then they had this elevator that went up to what they call the Raskeller in the sky, and go up, have a couple samples. Well, more than a couple, but anyway. and then I would go down in the gift shop, and I'd buy one of everything. And they just loved me there, obviously. And I never had the presence of mind to say, "Well, yeah, you got anything in the back room that you can't sell, or the you don't think of that, of course." And so I have people now come to see my collection. Where'd you get that? And I said, gift shop. What gift shop? I just, I'm kind of dating myself, but yeah. So that's what really got me started.
Right.
And when I would find these signs, they were in rough shape. A lot of times not working, and so I've been in the automotive business. I just retired last June. 50 years in the automotive business. So I fix things, right? So I thought, well, okay, I can fix that. And so I started doing that on my own. And people said, "Well, where did you get that?" I said, "Well, I made it." "Well, can you make it?" And now it's turned into this just unbelievable second business, so to speak. I'm busier now than I was doing regular work. So, and just having a blast doing it. I mean, it's such fun, and it's such great people, and it's just a wonderful hobby. It really is. It's hard to explain how fun it is, but
well, you're talking to a kindred spirit, and my story. I just this is just so fun. Sorry, Crystal, we're kind of like.
Oh no, I love it.
Crystal's still here.
Yeah. No, I'm listening. I have to share just a couple things that I grew up in an automotive family as well. So when I was in high school, I restored a 66 GTO with my dad, and so like I'm totally like into this stuff. Like this isn't boring to me at all. Like I'm in it. So
I didn't know that about you. Do you still do mechanical stuff, or try to?
No, not really. I mean, I'm very handy, and I'm always working on projects, but I haven't done a car project in years.
Well, just hearing you say that, I haven't done a car project in years. That just sounds amazing. So my father was the owner of the QT bar in Superior. Of course, one day, 7 years old or 8 years old, he brought home a deck of cards. This deck, and I just started staring. Well, look at that water makes some movement, right? For hours I would stare, Steven, into this blue water and this red canoe, and I just, as a kid, 7, 8 years old, it's 1974, 73, and could not figure out what was going on here with this thing. It just compelled me, and then of course I started becoming more aware of other items, and in junior high, I remember the junior high instructor telling me, "Peter, you can't only make Hamm's Bear stuff." I'm like, okay, well, that was the end of my art career.
Show the flip side of that card, Peter. Show the.
Oh, you bet. Well,
yeah. I mean, how can you not like that?
Well,
and everyone is different. All the face cards have the bear doing a different sport.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is really cool. He's bowling in that one.
Yeah. Every face card has got a different sport on it. So how can you not like that?
I love that bowling is the sport. I mean,
well, I just happen to have that. Yeah, I just happen to have that one. But I've got I did it actually with the first project that I made was from the deck, because I collected these decks. I have about 2 or 3 of these decks because of the connection it had to me when I was a kid. But you're right. That picture is bad enough for a 7-year-old, right? Just like, wow, what's going on here? But then you had all these, you got all these Hamms. You got and this one here was really, as a baseball fan myself, the Joker from the deck.
Mm-hmm.
This picture here really compelled me. But anyway, so then so I can remember, Stevan, when I was 13 for Christmas, I received a full-fledged scenorama in 1975. I woke up, our mantle in our house, my dad had his friends come and delivered the scenorama that was in the bar, and it came to our house and stayed there for a couple of years. 1975, Stevan.
Wow.
And then, oh, I know, I'm ancient. Then in 70s, right about that time, I put an ad in the newspaper. I want to buy ham stuff. And I started getting calls, and one lady said, yeah, I've got this sign with some clouds in the sky. And I was like, yeah. And my parents said, Peter, we don't want you going around town to people's homes. And they kind of 86 that plan. But back in 75, in 76, I wanted to start buying stuff, but I didn't. And you did, and I didn't, unfortunately. But it doesn't matter. It's all, like you said, it's all good. There's no regrets. But this blue water and these pictures and the artists who made these things, and there's just something that still has a huge appeal to me. And one of the segues, Crystal does a lot with, the spiritual side. She's kind of a mystical person. And I guess I've been thinking that this blue water and this image was really the start of my own, like, mystical element that I have. I really credit it to that as a child, just staring into that blue and just letting my eyes just kind of wander. So my connection with this brand is really deep. And then to be here with you and Crystal at the same time talking about it, it's just it's a dream come true. So that's that.
It's cool as hell. Yeah,
it's almost like, Peter, you were like doing your first meditating,
right?
Like it's like it brought you into this little trance, and you're like looking into the water, and then you're going inside and reflecting, and that's all tied to the beer, which is something physical, which is and also it is alcohol, so it has spirits in it, and spirits are it's called spirits for a reason, like and so maybe it is like kind of this spiritual thing that you have with Hamm's beer. It's not too far-fetched to think that is the case,
Well, thank you. And then just to kind of end the origin, and again, this came to me again this week in this preparation, is I remember the teacher talking about the Song of Hiawatha. And I don't know, Stevan, if you know that Longfellow poem. It's kind of a classic it's about the Native American god Hiawatha and his girlfriend Minnehaha. Well, and in our textbook, and I'm not an expert on the poem, but I just remember in the textbook, there was this beautiful picture that kind of reminded me of the Hamm's picture about this poem by Longfellow. And I see about a week later, we drove down to St. Paul, and I asked Dad, where's the Hamm's brewery? And he said, oh, it's on Minnehaha Avenue. I'm like, no, that can't be true. It's on Minnehaha. So that sealed it for me, that there was some, ancient, I don't know if there's an ancient energy, but something that someone thought of in the brewery, Stevan, and said, this is our path. We're going to be doing this water thing. And then I think they just took it to a very, if I may say, in my spin, a very spiritual level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's for sure. I say it is. And the thing is with Hamm's, I have the Reflection magazines. That was a bi-monthly magazine that all the employees got. And in that magazine, of course, they always have the listings of the employees, and there's 25, 30, 35 years that they've worked. And you don't keep employees at a brewery, or any business for that matter, that long without treating them really well. In fact, we had it one year, we always had a show at the old brewery after it closed in the parking lot, a trade show. And one year we agreed to, we got a hold of former employees, distributors, different people that were associated with Hamm's, and we invited them to a picnic after the show. And so we had about 20, I suppose, different guys show up. And without doubt, every one of those guys said what a great company that was to work for.
I'm glad to hear that.
And how because they were loved in St. Paul. I mean, it was part of the East St. Paul. I mean, that was it. Whatever. The one story that really stuck with me, there's one fellow, and we had every guy get up and kind of tell his story, so to speak. And the one guy got up and he says, "Hey," he says, "I was just a regular guy in the bottling plant." And he said, "My mother-in-law passed away, and it was a dead of winter, and she was out in Montana. It was out in Montana somewhere." So he says, "I asked my boss. I says, hey, I need to go to this funeral." He's take however long you need to go. And he says, we drove out there in the middle of a blizzard, got to this little town. I don't remember the name of the town, but this little town, found the funeral home, walked in the funeral home, and the biggest and the nicest bouquet there was from your friends at Hamm's."
Nice.
And I mean, if that doesn't give you chicken skin, nothing does.
Sweet.
And he says, I was just a worker in the bottling plant. I was not, Top Gun or nothing. But yeah, that told me right there what a great company that was, and they really cared for their employees. Centered around that sky blue waters. I mean, now that, like I say, the new can that Peter mentioned, I mean, they went back to what they call the retro style can with the crown logo, pine tree logo. Oh, I got a couple 30 packs here the other day, and it's just magnificent. It's
really?
Dark blue. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
You see so many, like the Facebook page, and you see so many people, posting, the can, which, the 70s can, which even when I first started, I mean, again, this is the image that I thought of Hamm's in this crown, right? And
that's the one. Yeah.
So when I got older and started thinking, why, I've never been too big of a fan of the contemporary can. I mean, it's always been just like, why'd they even switch? Mm-hmm. First of all, do you have any idea why they switched?
I say, you get the bean counters. They say, okay, let's change this up, and that's another facet of the deal. Is a different test cans that they had. Right. That let's try this color or this design.
Right.
And a lot of those are obviously one of a kind type things.
Right.
And I really enjoy those too. I got a good selection of those. But
I saw that red one that you had. Yeah, that was.
Yeah. And so I'm still kind of a can guy at heart, because that's how I started. So, and that's the only cans I have now are just Hamm's, and ones that are brewed by Hamm's. So yeah, they say the test cans are really kind of hold a special spot.
Sure, I'm sure.
Think of those guys in that meeting room. Okay, here's 4 different labels. Do you think any of these grab your eye? Do you think this will help? Because it was all about selling. I mean, and I think now they're going to find that this new label with the retro thing and the nostalgia thing going, it's going to go nuts.
Well, that's why we're here. I mean, I think that's another reason. I think you're right. It's going to go nuts. And I was this morning, I thought, they may even run the old commercials.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That'd be cool,
right?
Well, like I say, for the longest time, they back in probably early 2000. I knew the lady at the gift shop quite well. She'd always call me when something new came in, and she called me up and she said, "Hey, just give you a heads up." She says they're pulling the Bear. All Bear advertising is gone off the shelf as of today. I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, the Joe Camel deal, they don't want to break into kids, and so they took the Bear away." And oh man, that's my favorite part. And so it was gone for a long time, but now they're even bringing him back. So
wow.
I mean, they got a tap knob and
when I started and staring into that wall and looking at the cards, the Bear had stopped as well from the 70 till about 79. Mm-hmm. I keep writing letters to Hamm's as a kid saying, why don't you bring back the Bear? I don't understand this. I just couldn't understand as a kid. And, but I even went so far to, Les Blacklock, who is the photographer again of it, right? This is a Les Blacklock with a Leica lens. I mean, I became kind of not obsessed, but tried to follow his work and where he took these pictures and how he captured the aura of whatever it is, the Minnehaha Hiawatha spirit, the northern Minnesota spirit, the And then the fact that you mentioned, the quality of the company that it was, I just, trying to get who was the elevated being at Hamm's, or was it the Hamm's family? Was it Theodore? And
a lot of it was their advertising agency, Campbell Thune, were absolute genius. I mean, they were absolute geniuses, and they, like I say, they came up with the motion signs and that kind of stuff, and they were, and then obviously Bill Stein, who was one of the original artists for Hamm's. What a wonderful man he was. I mean, he embraced our club, our Hamm's Club. In fact, he designed our commemoratives every year, and he was just this nicest guy. He passed away here just last year, but he fully embraced our club, and he just loved the attention. I think he liked the attention that he was getting.
Oh, sure.
But he was so generous to our club. He designed the commemoratives every year, and he was just a great guy, and he would tell stories about how they would go down into bars in St. Paul to convert them over to Hamm's, whatever. 10 o'clock in the morning, they'd sit and have a beer. Hey, this is the way this should be. I mean, what a great time that had to be to work for a company like that. I mean, you get to drink beer while you're working. I mean, what's wrong with this picture, right? But yeah. I
was bartending at 13, so in 1976, so you
Nice.
can imagine things are a little bit different, then when it came to alcohol. And
oh gosh, I guess so. Well, they you could drink in the lunchroom during lunch. They had a tapper right there in the lunchroom. I remember walking by the lunchroom on the tours, and the employees are in there having a cocktail or having a beer. Yeah. We all brought stuff to kind of show and tell, whatever our photo albums or items or whatever, and they were just amazed that you guys are collecting that stuff. That's just and one of my favorite sayings is the stuff that's worth the most money is the stuff that was meant to be thrown away.
Right.
One of my
cardboard things.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. One of my favorite things I collect are the little trifold sports schedules. Because Hamm's was huge into sports. Right. And not only sponsored the Minnesota teams, but the Chicago teams and Houston teams. And after the year, why would you keep those?
Right. Yeah. Right.
You're going to get and during the year, they're in some.
Why would you keep those?
Yeah, well, right. And the season's over, and a lot of times they were in some of these billfold all marked up and folded up, and they didn't survive. I mean, the Scenaramas, like Peter was talking about, those, and they caught hell too because of the environment that they were in, but they actually were made to at least keep, whereas those schedules or any of that cardboard advertising stuff.
Yeah.
After the promotion, that went in the dumpster. Yeah.
Right. There was a phenomenon that I remember. There would be a three shaped. There'd be three shaped images, and a triangular cube, and then a lot of signs were made back then in the 70s that it would change and roll and change. I think Hamm's has one, and that was electronic actually, that where it switches, but they were mechanical. I don't know if that's the word for it, but cardboard signs made with that kind of concept of the turn. What really excited me, of course, when I got the Scenorama and then took it apart, is to see how it worked, right? And Crystal, I don't know if you've had a chance, Crystal, to see these signs in their beauty.
I looked at your website, Stevan, and I think I went down a rabbit hole of Hamm's signage and all sorts of things. So I have all these images in my head, but yeah, I definitely did.
When the water moves, right?
It's really cool.
The fellow that I talked to, the son of the guy that invented the sign from Lakeside Plastics, and how he got the idea was he was going home from work, and the sun was setting down in behind a picket fence, and he seen that motion, and that's how he came up with that. It's a simple concept, but what a great effect.
That's that is really cool, because
with the campfire and everything. I mean, genius.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, well, there you go, Crystal. There's your front for this episode, is that campfire. Right?
Well, and I love that. I love hearing how ideas are sparked. Because to me, that's like the root of, how did anything come to be? It starts with an idea. So to hear that, and I can visualize that in my mind. I can see the sunlight going through a picket fence, and then I see the sign, and I love the concept and just like hearing how those things start, because it's It's really intriguing.
Well, every once in a while, you know, if you see two fences that are together, even metal fences, and if you're driving your car, and if you look and you can see that kind of
that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's just two. It's a stationary line with another set of lines going over the top of it.
And this is like going.
That's all it
Looks
is.
so good. Well, Steven, so wait, so the Rippler, I mean, the first motion sign, was that the Rippler?
Are you talking the water motion signs, you mean?
Well, good question. I'll back it up. What was Hamm's first motion sign?
The first one, it was made out of cardboard, actually. It stands about like so tall, and it's got a moon on the clear cellophane, and it just rotates, and then there's a bottle with it pouring into a glass, and it looks like the beer is pouring into the glass. The bubbles come, and then the moon, it says age from moon to moon on it.
Right.
And that's kind of what I consider the first motion sign that Hamm's had, and that would have been late 40s.
So was that plastic? Was that cardboard with like a wire? Is that how it, or was it actual? It was light.
It had an incandescent bulb in it with a little motor.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And those
So
are
that was
obviously super tough. But I did the first, what I would call the one that everybody, this is 1956 TV Rippler, they call it.
Right.
And the reason they call it that is because it looks like a TV. And then there's obviously the Scenorama that Peter mentioned. There's a couple different sizes of that. There's two different sizes of that. And then there's the 65 anniversary Rippler, which was made to celebrate 100 years of brewing, 1865 to 1965. And then the Starry Nights, which was voted the best beer sign in America in 1958, by the way. And you can see why once you see, I mean, it's a fantastic sign. And then they had a little small one that actually went on top of the cash register called the Dusk to Dawn or Sunrise Sunset. Yeah. And it did exactly that. It changed from dusk to dawn. And that would originally sat on top of a cash register. It had like a little light that shine down on the keys. That's another one that's really popular. But those are kind of your big boys as far as the motion signs.
Crystal, you certainly, the moon element and the dusk to dawn and age many moons. It's just and Crystal is very much a full moon person, and she does a lot of full moon meditations, etc. And again, it just seems to connect to some kind of a mystical element, even in the signs and in the slogan, the language, and the aura of. I mean, you look at the Starry Nights or the Dusk to Dawn, and you look into that, and there are some moments, maybe not all of the cycle, but some moments where it's just absolutely beautiful. Just really captures something that.
I also noticed that I feel like there is a bit of an indigenous element, like that one.
Right out of my mouth, yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like they're like the drumming.
The artist was a Native American, so that they hired one of the bear drawers. And I just assumed that, going back again to my one obsession, is that I think I'm obsessed. But I tried to figure out where did this design come from? And then I saw this oh gosh, Steven, maybe you gotta help me here. But I thought maybe this was like from Ojibwa, from powwow dances.
Yeah, they had an Indian drum and bugle chord that played in parades.
Trying to express, I think what we're trying to express here is this kind of again, the mystical element of the Midwest and of maybe a Native American shamanism. Crystal, you mentioned the drums.
One thing I find fascinating is that the ownership of the brewery changed over the years, but it seems like the following of the beer didn't really change. So that makes me think that they were kind of pulling the same essence through, with each ownership, or how did it change?
Yeah, not only that, but what back in those days, the local breweries, the people were very, very loyal to their local breweries. I mean, St. Paul, obviously you had Hamm's and you had Schmidt. Those were their brands. And then you go over to Minneapolis and it was Grain Belt and Glick's. In fact, when Hamm's bought the Gunther Brewery in Baltimore in 1954, they mistakenly stopped brewing Gunther beer. Well, right. Baltimore, they've got people in Baltimore was very loyal to the Gunther brand. Well, Hamm's went in, stopped brewing Gunther and just started brewing hams. Well, and then another thing that happened is they couldn't get enough demand, so they shipped in several railroad cars full of hams from St. Paul. Well, it froze en route.
Oh no.
They didn't know it, and it happened, and of course it ruined the taste of beer. So that started so that brewery failed rather quickly because of it. And they learned from their mistake then when they bought the Bergy Brewery in San Francisco, because then they continued not only hams, they continued to brew Bergy. And so yeah, like I say they did make some mistakes. I mean, but they were very aggressive in those early 60s and 70s years. I mean, with their marketing but yeah, I say hams, and that's I think why it's so popular now. That it's the kids, you know. Well, hey, my dad drank that, my grandpa drank. I remember that as a kid, and you know, the nostalgia thing has never been bigger than it is right now, in my opinion. And
of course, I never threw my stuff away. I definitely prized it, but except for the deck of cards, maybe I didn't carry anything with me to Japan. And now I've got a little bit of collection here. It's kind of difficult, but what's going on? It's just remarkable. And I think personally, I mean, again, from my view, I think it's you know, it's got this mystique element of it. And I think you probably agree with that. But I mean, the state of the collecting market and the state of the sales of the brand. I mean, it just seems like it's on fire, just exploding.
Well, I always say that people tend to collect things they grew up with.
Sure.
There's so many baby boomers, they're getting towards the end now, but they remember their dads and their grandpas drinking it, and they remember those commercials as kids. And I think that's kind of helped translate it a little bit. Plus, you know, the beer is good beer. It's pretty inexpensive. And you know, you college kids, hey, sure, we drank the cheapest beer we could find.
Yeah, right.
You know, we had 3 favorite kinds: bottle, keg, or can. I mean, we didn't care. I mean, you know,
we don't want to tell people the cheap beers that we were drinking, Steve, back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Crystal, my 16th or 17th birthday, I got a case of beer from my dad's liquor store. And it was I'm sorry to any Fox Deluxe fans that might be listening, but we were drinking this beer and all of us were wondering what is on the roof of our mouths. Fox Deluxe. So anyway, but I think that certainly Hamm's and Adolf Coors is producing a fine beer. And I'm kind of sad about the light. The light was absolutely delicious, but I guess they just can't. The light is done now, right? Is that
yeah. There's rumors, but I don't know. I know the fellas out there pretty good, and I you know, when this whole kind of phenomenon thing started, he says, I'll be honest with you, he says, we bought the brand to kill it off, and so then it got this nostalgia thing hit about that same time, and you know, they reinvented the, you know, Schlitz has come out now with their original recipe, and the Pabst thing has kind of caught on again. It's the nostalgia retro thing is really big right now, and Hamm's has just jumped in with both feet.
Yeah, finally, right?
To do it, because it's almost I hate to say trendy, but I mean it's
kind of trendy, I think.
Yeah.
And Peter, I'm wondering, in Japan, like, I know that Japanese people look at American culture, and sometimes certain things are really big. Does anyone in Japan know what Hamm's is, or is this there yet, or are you bringing it there? Is what I want to know.
If anyone's bringing it here, it's me. I try to, although a friend of mine told me a couple of years ago that he does have a mini Cinerama, which is about this big. It's just a shortened version of the big one. So there is a mini Cinerama in Japan. I know that.
If you took an American beer and you tried to put it in Japan, I think the best match is Hamm's, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think your passion for this has kind of kept Hamm's alive through the years. Do you think? Like do you think they would have maybe stopped making T-shirts or something if they thought Stevan wasn't going to buy them out?
You almost could have at one time, Stevan. You almost.
I tell you, the one guy, they said they had to put in a new canning line. I says, I'd like to think I had something to do with it.
Stevan, do you identify with yourself as an artist? I mean, because it's very artistic to be doing what you're doing to fix those things up.
As far as restoring these signs, yeah, I take great pride in that. To take one and that doesn't work, that I just had one today that I finished up for a guy, and it, you know, and sometimes I wonder, you know, I have a hard time saying no. I feel sorry for, it's almost like I feel sorry for him. There's almost like I'm adopting a kid, you know. and I make these parts to restore them, and there's nothing better than to see the look on their face when they come to get their sign after, you know, it's been neglected and sat in the basement all these years, and it's broken and it's dusty and dirty, and it doesn't work. And then when they come get it and I plug it in and everything works again, oh, it's just it's really it's an indescribable feeling to see their face, to see that. And I just always say, okay, you've just been infected with the Hamm's virus. I mean,
yeah,
I
the
mean,
Hamm's virus.
Yeah.
It's the swarm.
Yeah.
This is what's
and
happening.
then of course, so then I bring them down to my house, and I said, well, you know, I always say, well, you got time for a tour? And they think my shop that I have, they think that's my stuff.
Right,
No. This is just extra stuff here. And so I bring them down to the house, and they come in the garage, and they're going, oh, holy cow, you know.
Well, yeah.
Then they get into the house, and then they come into the basement, and they go to the first room, and they're just, you know. And then I take them into the second room. I think that kind of puts them over the edge a little bit, but
and then we get into the dungeon.
Yeah, and it's fun to see the reaction with that too. And I always tell them, I said, well, you think you brought your ham sign to the right guy? Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think.
And you know, people say, well, you must have everything. No, I don't.
No way.
Not even close. There's just nobody does. I mean,
right.
I tell people, I says, you know, whether you're just starting or you're advanced, I don't care whose collection you go see. You always see something you haven't seen before, or a way of displaying it, or something like that. I mean, that's the fascination of this hobby I have. That they made that, you know, and
still.
Yeah, now guys got to be pretty vigilant, because, and I don't want to call it fake items, but there's what I call fantasy pieces. In other words, stuff that they've made that isn't legitimate Hamm's pieces, and they're getting dang good at it. I mean, these a lot of it's coming from India, but they'll make these porcelain signs, and they got the little chips in there, and they put them outside, and they rust. I mean,
wow,
you got to really be careful, especially if you pay big dollars for it.
Well, that's only gonna get worse, I would assume, right?
Well, yeah, well, because there is money involved here. Obviously, it isn't, and you know, and you'll get that in any hobby. I mean, it's like in the car business. Well, they'll take a 70 Barracuda and make a 70 Hemi Cuda out of it, you know, and they'll even get so far as they're not scrupulous enough to change the numbers even. I mean, and as long as they advertise it as a fantasy piece, I don't.
More power to you.
More power to her. And I tell people that I have people send me pictures of stuff all the time. Is this real? No, it's not. But I says, if you like it and it isn't terribly priced, buy it. Who cares?
Right.
But the problem that I have with that stuff is, now we know it's a fantasy piece, but down the line, say it changes hands a couple times, that area is going to get a little blurred. But by far the beer collectible hobby and the people that are in it, the best. I mean, we're in competition, but it's a friendly competition. I mean, and if there is a bad egg in there, some have come up, that it doesn't take long to get them weeded out. This hobby polices themselves better than any other hobby I've ever participated in.
Well, it's the sky blue waters. I mean, if you don't get that, then if you don't understand what, I don't know, the effect that and the legacy, and again the mystique of this, you know, age for many moons, and if you, I mean, what are you doing here on this planet? I mean, what's your right? I mean, you're missing.
People ask me, well, why Hamm's? And I said, well, if you're going to collect beer stuff in Minnesota, what better brand? I mean, land of sky blue waters, and how can you not like the bear?
I can remember, Steven, talking on the phone with my first girlfriend, and all of a sudden I heard the bear is back, or that commercial. I think it was the parachute. I think it the first time it played. And
he jumped out of the plane with his critters.
Yeah, I said, oh my God, I was saying to my girlfriend, oh my God, the bear is back. Crazy.
She was probably like, what are you talking about, Peter?
You like beer or not? I mean, you're fascinated. I mean, the helicopter with the parachutes. I mean,
yeah. That's 60s, right?
Yeah. How do you beat that? I mean,
I know. So my brother Matthew is just retired. He's kind of a handyman, and he actually repaired a Dusk to Dawn sign for me, and I was watching, and I don't spend, he's your brother, but we don't spend time. He's developed his own way, and he was just staring at the sign. I'm like, Maddie, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just calming my mind and trying to figure out how this works. And I was watching. I was like, who are you? First of all, I didn't know you could do this stuff. And second, I'll be darned if he didn't fix it. The electric was bad, and the roller was bad, and he got it going.
I think I sent in the parts. I think, didn't I?
Oh, you very well may have done.
I think I did. I think I did. I remember that. Yeah.
To put it in, and then the bulb, of course, the difficult bulbs sometimes, which is a different market in and of itself. And so I don't know, about 2 years ago, I had something go wrong with one of my signs here, and I just thought, I'm going to try to do what my brother did and see if I just look at it and just try to see. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a remote car. It quit working, and I'll be dang, Steven, if I didn't fix it. By just like, not thinking I can't do it, but just calming your mind and just like seeing what's going on here. And so many of us, I think, when it comes to repairing, think we can't, and then for sure, then you can't, right? I mean, you just, if you think you can't do it, it's not going to happen, right?
It's not going to happen, no.
Right, but if you give yourself a chance to just try to understand what's going on, then sometimes you can do it. And I think that's a pretty good lesson for all of us to learn. Actually, is just figure out what's happening first, and then maybe you can.
I have this theory that anything can be fixed if you have the right tool. And a tool isn't always like something that you use that like in your hand. It's not always like your pen or whatever, but a lot of times the tool is like the idea, and that kind of comes back to like, so just thinking that you can fix it, you already can. Just have to figure out, the ways.
Positive attitude, it means a lot.
Totally. And like, and also like when you are doing something and you don't have the right tool, and then you finally figure out like what the right tool is, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier.
But it kind of opens up a whole new brainwave, a whole new way to think for the next time, right?
Yeah, it's like you have a whole new synapse for.
There's nothing like that feeling. One day, this has been several years ago, my phone rings, right? And it's this big, long number, not a normal United States number.
Right.
And maybe it's Peter calling me from Japan, for all I know. But anyway,
yeah,
so I answer it, and here's this guy from Australia. And he was quite hard to understand because he had a really, English style accent, whatever. And I suppose I thought I had a bad accent too. Well, anyway, he had a friend in Salt Lake City that he knew that had a Scenorama, and he had seen that and had fallen in love with it and wanted one in the worst way. And he says, I did a little research. I found you. I understand you have them. And I says, yeah, I do. And I says, in fact, I have one ready to go right now. And we agreed on a price. And he says, what I need is to have you, send that to, my daughter lives in Los Angeles, and she's going to have a baby right around Christmas time. He says, I'm flying over to Los Angeles when she has this child. Okay. And he says, I can pick it up then. And I says, well, I've got a problem. I won't ship it.
Right.
And he, what? I says, no, I said, I can't ship it. I says, it'll get destroyed. I'll guarantee it. And
guarantee it. Yeah.
He said, well, I really want to get one from you. And I said, I get that. But he said, well, let me see what I can do. So about 2 weeks later, he calls me up and he says, how far are you from Spencer, Iowa? And I says, well, an hour and a half. And he says, all right. He says, I have a friend in Spencer, Iowa, that is a scrap dealer. And this guy in Salt Lake City was a big scrap dealer. And he says, he comes to this place in Spencer quite often. Could you get the sign down to him? My buddy will pick it up from him, bring it back to Salt Lake City. Then when I come into Los Angeles, I'll go to Salt Lake City and pick the sign up. I said, yeah, I'll do that for you. And I said, I'm still a little concerned about you getting that sign on the plane back to Australia.
Right.
He says, no worries, mate. It's my plane.
Oh.
Okay. So yeah, I do have a Scenorama in Brisbane, Australia. And he had to change the electrical a little bit because the cycles are different. But
is he happy with it?
Oh yeah. He said, in fact, I did an article for our newsletter about it. He's got it hanging above his mantle in Australia. He says, you ever come to Australia? You got a place to stay, but no worries, mate. It's my plane. Hamm's has touched so many lives, not just with their beer, with their advertising, with their employment. I mean, there's just so many segments.
About 2 weeks ago, I had this strange dream, Crystal, where I was pulling a string out of a wall and it just kept coming and coming and coming. I'm like, what the heck kind of dream is that? I went online. A lot of people have it where they're pulling the string out of their mouth. And what it means, or what people think it means, is that everything's coming together.
Thank you, universe, for putting us all together.
Yeah, thank you, universe.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was cleaning up my table and it says all, can you see it?
Yep. Can you imagine all dreams coming true?
Perfect.
I think it's perfect.